I have a Discord. The invite is in the description and right on the screen right now. You can join and ask questions. I'll be there and some others will be there to help you answer. Feel free to ping me, but I might not be there all of the time. The second thing, a lot of this video is biased to what I enjoy of the game and what I think does a lot of damage. There's probably some secret builds out there that involve certain weapon arts which are put low on a tier list, which I may or might be wrong, but hey, this is a tier list thing. So you choose what you choose and I pick what I pick, alright? I don't know if that even made sense. Back to the video. Every single guild is good for a specific type of class. For example, the mage guild is going to be superior when you use the mage. So, of course, I have to actually base off of these off of the metas currently. And if I'm doing that, Thief is poo. Thief, although it sounds like, oh, because tons of dexterity builds, you know, all around it are pretty good. The Thief doesn't actually give stuff that actually helps with dexterity. Sneak attacks aren't helpful unless you're like a healer, and you're not a healer through dexterity. Just using Divine. But who cares? It's bad. Really bad. Next up is going to be the Holy. Holy is good for healers, and because healing is currently a little bit nerfed, C tier I guess, because although healing is kind of required for some builds and they're going to use this, most builds nowadays benefit more off of a better type of healing, which is going to be shown soon. Next is Mage. I'll put this A. Mage, the weapon on cooldown ability is awesome, and you can't really say anything about it. It's just that good. Any class benefits from it. Next is going to be the Gladiator. Put it probably C tier because it's a tank build. Tank builds aren't meta, and you may as well be doing damage rather than taking damage. So it's pretty that much simple, and although it gets a small amount of physical boost as well, which I hear there's some good physical metas nowadays, even if I said so differently in the past. Pretty stupid stuff. Gladiator, B. See things through walls, I believe. Although I've never used it, I'm looking at the perks right now, and it's pretty decent, considering it buffs physical a lot, and helps with a lot of other builds. I'll put it at the near C tier though, because it's not as good as other things. Next is Monk. I put that at A tier, S tier, sorry. Because Monk is really high. Actually no, I'll put it A tier. H is much better, because although you might say, oh, but Jared, your favorite build, the Poison Rev build, does it not use Monk? Yes, it does, but there's other builds out there that are really good, like Vampire. Wherever viable in any build, using Vampire is super, super helpful. Of course, a lot of people don't like taking the extra holy damage and not being able to do any B dungeons, but this Vampire quality of life is so good. Being able to heal off of everything you kill, and a lot of it, by the way, super helpful. So that's why it's there. Next is X, Poopy. I put C2. And I think that's a fair judgment. That was the easy one. Next one. Alright, this one's easy. These are the bosses. So the first one is going to be Lord Frog. Lord Frog is one of the hardest bosses in the game. I'll put that at S tier right now. Yeah, S tier, because the waves before it all are much harder than anything else here. And although the requirements is something I'm putting into factor for all of these, the time it takes to be able to go to this boss battle is very difficult, and you may as well be farming other things. Of course, required long cooldowns between every boss battle in the game anyways. Of course, this one is going to be the hardest to go through. Queen Bee is at A because the battle before you fight her is also pretty difficult for vampires as well. And the time it takes to be able to find the maze is based on luck and finding the exit. And this is a relatively easy battle for the boss compared to the Lord Frog, but of course it's still pretty hard considering it's the hardest level requirement as well. But I think it's the easiest boss. Next is Lord Stratos, B. Lord Stratos, the only hard thing about him is just making sure you don't fly off. And as long as you are able to make sure you're not hit by his tornadoes so that won't happen, you'll win this fight super easily. And just knowing how to do that is all it takes. Of course, the easiest way to go to him is just looking for teams and server links so that you can get inside one of the boss battles if you're quick. So I guess that's a pretty hard pre-requirement. Next is Cacti King C. Cacti King, pretty easy to beat, not gonna lie. And although the Cacti King may or may not be one of the most sought after bosses because of the Cacti King set, which is really meta right now, you'll most likely find that all of the Cacti King boss fights usually just come to people waiting around until it starts. And the fight itself is really easy because you can have 18 people fight it at once rather than just 10 for these two. Also 18 for Strolled Stratus, but then again, that's just super easy guy. Next is Emperor Mungus. Put a D, I guess. I mean, he's pretty easy overall. He's very slow, and his attacks are easily dodgeable if you're good enough at the game. But his ground attacks, pretty devastating. But like I said, this is like pretty rhythmic right here of going down. Yeah, it's great. I'll put it at C tier. His ground attack's pretty harsh. Alright, next is going to be the runes. Most runes in this game are affected by which class you're actually going for, because of course you'd much rather the damage type rather than this ability, unless it's very specific. But I'm going to be going over each of the actual abilities that each of these runes do. For example, healing, this is actually pretty crap because of how long it takes to heal. Although it does heal, and it's one of the only ways to heal in the game with a rune, other than the Rune of Cleansing, and you're going to see that actually works. Okay. Next is going to be the runes. Most runes in the game, you may as well take the rune that's associated with your class type. Like if you're going fire, you want to use the fire rune. But I'm going to be basing all of these judgments on the tier list based on how the abilities they actually do, how well those are. For example, fire rune, poo. Pretty simple, doesn't do a lot of damage. I'll put it at Z though because there's worse out there, but the damage is pretty low. You can get it pretty early on though, by killing Dragonators, but pretty crap otherwise. Next is the healing. The best healing rune in the game, I would say, if you don't count the spam healing with the cross from the sky. I'll put it at B, because it's healing nonetheless, and it's better than some other things, like the fire rune, I guess. I'd much rather have this than that. Pretty simple. Next is Magic Wand. This is another one of those things which are only good if you're using magic. And the thing itself is terrible. I'm putting it the same as C tier, because I think these do the same damage if I had to guess. I'm not 100% sure on that claim though. But it has a low cooldown, which is why people use it. The Dex rune. Now you might be wondering, I use the Dex rune. I do! But here's the thing. Dex rune by itself, the roll, poo. Literally it's just a longer roll, which you may as well use healing. It's that simple. Next is the taunting rune. Only good for tank builds. And most tank builds already have a way of taunting with their ability. But it's just the best one in the game. So why are you using this? I don't know. It's poo. Next one is the reinforce. I believe this just reinforces you, right? Yeah, cast to reduce incoming damage. It's much better than the taunting rune because casting to reinforce less damage is pretty good. So I'm gonna put this at A tier. It's a really good build overall. So I wouldn't be blaming people if they used it in every single build, despite it only giving magic defense, which is pretty crap. Next is the hex one. This one weakens the enemy's damage. Poo. C. Nope. C. Why would you want to do that? I don't even know. It's pretty poo. May as well use other things. Next is Rage. S. Being able to do more physical damage of any time is pretty good. Now, keep in mind that most physical builds already have a way to have Rage in the first place, so you don't really need this. But like I said, this is basing off of what his abilities actually do. Next is B and Cacti. B is the superior, so I'm putting it at A, and then, actually no, B and then C, because Summoner isn't that good anyways. Cleanser is poo. You probably use that because it does 1.4 healing every 30 seconds, and gets rid of your effects, which most people don't even need. But because you can get this in such an early game, I'll put it higher because here's the thing. I'm not basing off of how easy it is to get. Next is Launch Rune. This is pretty good, I would say. You can jump real high, so it's very handy. And although jumping real high may not seem like the best thing, it's helpful for a lot of fights, you'd be surprised. Next is Slizzard. S. If you disagree with me on Slizzard being on S, you don't have this Slizzard rune. It's that simple. Alright, now going on to enemies. If you're wondering why the Gremlin Lancer aren't here, this is because they have lunar images on them and I'm too lazy to find them. Bunny. This is also based on difficulty, which you can obviously see that the bunny's gotta be D tier because it's the easiest enemy in the game. And second easiest, you bet, Sporelig. It's pretty much right next to Spawn. He's pretty easy to kill. And as long as you just constantly hit it, it might be even easier than the bunny sometimes. Next is Dire. Now, of course, let's put this in C, but you're gonna find that difference is gonna be a lot widened because the difference between Bunny and Dire Bunny isn't that much. In fact, it's in C tier. I'm only putting in there for representation and it's only slightly harder than the Bunny. But you're gonna find that some things are gonna be harder later on. Next is going to be the Mageling. He's pretty hard. And comparing it to Dire Bunny, I would put it harder than the Dire Bunny definitely because this is actually really fun to fight against and you can actually do a very small amount of skill to be able to kill it very effectively. So it's at C, and that's about it for that one. And then there's a Wolf, which is at B. Wolf is very annoying, specifically when he gets the high ones, but I'm gonna put this one at C specifically because the wolves don't come in packs, the plains wolves. And so when you have these ones coming up to you, biting you and doing knockback, it's pretty easy just to time your attacks so that you can attack it before you attack them. It's pretty easy there. Next is going to be the Bumblebee. This is going to be a D. Very easy enemy to kill. And although it does poison, it doesn't give a crap. He has pretty much the same health as a bunny, I think. I don't know. Next is Drone. It's only going to be the same reasoning as I put the Dire Bunny in C. It's just a slightly harder bunny. And although the Drone is a kind of significant amount of health, you're going to find that it is still very easy. Next is this idiot. He is going in A. He is so hard to defeat. He requires a lot of skill and just so much. He's so annoying. His rampaging, everything is really bad. And it is going to be at the lower end of A, or the high end of B, definitely. And I think I should put it in B, actually, because I think in A I'm going to put some other things in there which are higher, actually. So they're going to find that he's actually one of the hardest ones here. Compared to this guy, it's pretty easier compared to him. Although he summons, and although he does his slams, which is very inconsistent after he summons, pretty easy to dodge out of the way and hit him a few times over and over again. So yeah, he's going there. Next is this guy. I hate him so much. He's in B. You heard that right. Although he's the easiest, or supposedly easiest enemies in Swamp, you'd be surprised that I'm putting Toadzerker in C. That's right. That little frog, so annoying. Especially in dungeons when there's a lot of them. You just get stun locked over and over and over again. You can't do nothing about it. So yeah, that's why he's there. Of course, the Dragonator will be going in A. It is pretty difficult. And actually no, screw that. It's going in B, I think. Higher end of B or lower end of A, same thing. He has a large health pool, but his attacks are really easy to dodge, and if you're just good at the game, you can pretty much easily beat him if you just make sure he does his fire attack rather than his tail attack. And his Cacti in the desert. I'll put this at the higher end of D. He's pretty difficult considering he just his attacks you can't really dodge them very well sometimes. And he's pretty RNG based when you fight him, I think. But it's nothing compared to this guy, which is the hardest mini-boss enemy in the zone. Hardest in the game, I would say, because his tail attacks come right after his brawling attack, and actually, no, forget, he's going in A. That's how hard he is. Yep, super hard. That's how hard he is. Next is Void Root. I'm gonna put him at A, which is a little bit of an unfair thing, because Void Root, I think, is slightly... Well, the difference between Void Root and Boulder are pretty different, because Boulder has a slightly higher health pool and is able to do attacks which blast you back, but that do significantly less damage to the Void Root, which can stun lock you and do massive slamming attacks which are hard to avoid. So he's definitely harder, but Boulder will be going behind him, even though the Void Root is kind of harder than the Boulder. Next is this guy. He's pretty hard, specifically because he comes in a pack of 3, and if you get within that pack of 3, there's nothing you can really do about it. Luckily, they do knockbacks, so you're going to get out of there quickly, but they're super fast as well. So you're going to have the right setup to be able to kill this, and it's pretty rare to find people with that those days. Squall is going to be down at B, though. They're pretty easy to kill. They have a lot of health, and they just run away when they get low health, which is annoying, but what can you really do about it? This is Scowman. This is going at S. Why? Because Scowman does tons of damage. A lot of people don't realize that the only way to be able to avoid his attacks is you can't. You have to block. It's that simple. It doesn't do a lot of damage if you block. If you have a decent amount of, like a very small amount of protection, you do like at most 5 damage every 20 seconds, which is fine. Next is Steam. He's pretty hard in my opinion. He's super rare to find as well, so when you find him, you tense up and panic. And it's super hard because he's really hard to find. So you're gonna typically be really bad against this guy, especially some of his attacks. I don't even know half of this guy's attacks. He's the rarest enemy in my opinion. Next is this guy. You'll be surprised that I'm putting him in A tier. Yep, he is easier to kill than a Slizzard. That's how easy he is. He was so cheesable if you just go in a nearby branch and kill him. And although I had to say, yeah, he was harder than the Slizzard, of course. How many times have you defeated a Slizzard versus how many times have you defeated an Iron Slayer? I may have died to an Iron Slayer once in my entire thing. And that was because I was an idiot. You can easily cheese Iron Slayers, compared to Slizzards, which about 3/4 of the time I'll live, but the other quarter I will die. And that's why I like to ratio that. Bombers, B tier. They're pretty hard, but they're pretty good dodge out of the way, so they do tons of damage. I'll put them in the higher end of A tier though, I think that's reasonable. And then there's the Easter Bunny. There's a hard one. Higher end of C tier. Pretty rare. Knocked back pretty far away. Pretty easy kill either way though. Yeah, that's it. Music. Many, if you're watching this, I like most of your music. The title theme for Voxlblade. A lot of people are going to complain about this one because most people who have music disabled, this is the only music that they won't have disabled as soon as they log in the game. And that would put that at big D tier, but not for me. It's actually a pretty decent song for being 8-bit. Put it at a good high C tier. I mean, C tier is still not that bad, but compared to some of the other stuff here, now I'll put it B tier. Compared to the other stuff here, there might be some good stuff here too. Frontier Village, this is poop. Gotta be honest, not that good. Not that catchy, not that anything. And if one of the first things you're hearing as you're learning the game, not the best music. This is Overgrown Forest. This is poo. It's stupid. It doesn't have anything to commit to anything. And nothing. Wilderness, harder one to find. So put it at a B tier. It's a pretty good one overall, and I like it a lot. Flora Fields, C tier, not the best. Going in there for a while and hearing that music gets pretty bad actually. But yeah, I put it at D tier actually. It's pretty bad. Cutlands, this is a good one. I put it at A tier. It's pretty nice, catchy, and everything. Cacti Field, not that good. I put it at a C tier as well, I believe. I think that's appropriate. Lord Frog Cavern is a little dramatic-ish. I don't really like it too much though. Put it at a C tier. But versus Lord Frog is an S tier. Pretty much every boss is going to be an S tier, and if you disagree, that's you. B, Icy Plateau. You listen to this one a lot, and it's not that bad listening to it a lot. It's pretty nice overall. Magus, I don't know what I'm listening to when I'm listening to Magnus. Coldblade's Coin is S tier. I love that shop. It's awesome and everything. Bumbles. I put it at a B tier. It's a bit dramatic. I like going that when going up against the boss. Queen Bee, probably the worst boss music. I really like it. It's kind of bad overall, but like you said, feel free to disagree with me. Deadlands, very dramatic, but not as dramatic as some other stuff. I put it at C tier. It's not really music, you know. Kaka King, S tier. You can't disagree. D tier, Approaching Void. I don't know what I'm listening to. It's just dun 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 dun. Not that good. I don't like it at all. Lord Stratos. Actually, no. Why am I going that way? Blood Moon. Blood Moon is slightly better. Put it at C tier. It's better than Approaching Void. Harvest Moon, pretty good. A tier. Lord Stratos SS. You cannot disagree with me. Lord Stratos is the best music in the game. I think this is pretty nice. Harvest Moon is pretty nice as well. So you want to know which weapon art is the best? That's a fair ask, but I must warn you that you should not go for a certain path down your progression just because you like what a weapon art does. It's not a fair assumption, and it's sometimes more weapon arts are harder to get to the others. And I won't be going over it in this video. I'm just going over which weapon arts are the best. So I'm going to start off the bat. Boom, this is the best weapon art in the game. Why? It's because it's one of the hardest to get, and you can build so much off of that weapon art. And that's just going to go straight in S tier because of that. Next one is Lunge. I'm going to start from the left here and then go down to the right because other than that one, of course, because everyone knows that's really good. So next one is Lunge. I'll put this one at a C tier, mostly because Lunge you can normally get with pretty much any build whatsoever, and it's pretty decent for what it does, being able to stun the enemies as you go forward with a little bit of tenacity involved. So it's not that bad, and I'm gonna give it a C tier. Next one is Slash. That is Spin. I'm gonna give it a C tier as well. Very similar to C. It does a little bit less viable. Like it's not as viable. You can't use it in a lot of situations, but it's still pretty good. So I'm gonna leave it right there. Next one is the Triple Dagger. This thing sucks. I gotta be honest. It's normally used for dagger builds, and the people who go to daggers, I feel sorry because recently Dexterity got nerfed to the ground, which a lot of them is based out of. And the fact that that it's literally just a few slashes in front of stuff and then you leave is terrible. It does so little damage. So yeah, that's kind of bad. Next one is the daggers. A little bit better than C tier, I would say. I'd say B tier, mostly because this is a harder to get weapon art, so you can't really blame it for being better than everything else so far. So although it looks like so far I'm grading things based on how hard it is to get, you'll see later that is not the case. Next one is Explosion. Explosion, pretty decent. I've used it a little bit with some of my builds before, but it could be better. I mean, it does a decent amount of damage, so I might put it at B tier. In fact, because of that, I'm going to move the Poison build to C tier as well. Because even if they are better in terms of the DPS, you got to remember that all of these weapon arts that are better in terms of the DPS is only because they require more SP. Because of this, I'm going to be grading it based on how well it is in terms of SP, and that's why Starstruck is up there, because it's unique. You can't compare it to anything else in terms of the cost of the SP. Next is Javelin. Javelin's also bad. This is mostly because Javelin is pretty much a used once of a line, and although you might say, oh, you can put it into a crowd and everything, and it scales of a holy, I believe it scales with, there's better things out there, because when you go holy, you want to heal people. And although there's like spear builds which goes for this, which I believe there's a good fire or wind build that you use with the Javelin, there's better alternatives within those classes rather than just using the overall normal Javelin. Next is going to be Barrage. This is going to go at C tier as well. A lot of things are going C tier, you'll see, but hopefully we'll be getting some better things soon. This is mostly because Barrage only used for the Monk Guild to punch in front of them. And Monk Guild, although benefits the best from guns, and I would give that excuse of putting it in C tier because you don't want to be close to the enemy as a Monk build, it's mostly there because its damage is pretty low. And it was like, oh, the daggers are the same thing. Well, C tier, this one you are not forced to use, you're forced to use, and it does a slightly more amount of hits. Therefore, builds which use that build upon the more hits you do, the more damage, like bleed builds or poison builds, it's going to benefit a little bit more. Next is this. This is going to go in A tier. Yeah, that's right. This gives you rage and stomps the ground and taunts every enemy. This is awesome for tank builds. And of course, tank builds are not viable in endgame very much because all pros delete everything instantly anyways. But in terms of giving yourself rage without a rage rune for a skill, it's pretty nice. This is good for builds, the physical builds that don't want to use their rune for the rage rune. So yeah, that's very nice. Next is the slash builds. So this is also physical, and I haven't used this in an endgame build at all, so I'm assuming it's terrible. But I hear that it does weaken the enemy. So I'm putting it at B tier. This is mostly because I don't know the most about this one. Oh, this one either. So these are the two I don't really know a lot about, because this shit, throw them to the side. I don't know why that does that and has such a high cooldown. It's stupid. Next is Retaliate. S tier. It is overpowered right now and allows you to get tons of DPS, making you invincible for a short amount of seconds and reflecting that damage. That's just overpowered in every single way. There's nothing you can really say about it. It's going at the top, and I don't think it's ever going to come down, because it's super easy to get as well. Yeah. Next is Magic Beam. Most people use this when they have a build of some kind, so that they have a low weapon arc cooldown so they can spam it on other things. Or only because it's the best thing they have, because they're using a mage handle of some sort and the weapon is not related to anything at all. So although this is good-ish for magic builds, but people normally use them for builds which kind of suck. So I'll put it at D tier. I'll put it to C tier. I'll put it right there just to show that it's not the worst in the entire game, but still pretty bad. Next is the Bomb. This is not the best mage ability, but it's really good. It pairs well with weapon arc cooldown reduction because it's fun to use. This is one of my favorite to use in the first place. Even though there's things that are better, this is really fun to use because you throw a whole bomb and it deletes everything. I think it also does the highest amount of singular damage outside of Retaliate. So it's pretty good that way. Next is the Beam. I would say Beam is in the higher terms of B tier. It is better than the Mage Bomb in terms of its use because of its lower cooldown and very similar type of damage. Although, of course, its radius is smallened. What's good about it compared to the Mage Bomb is you can use it instantly. Mage Bomb you can get cancelled, and pretty much if you use the Mage Bomb in builds like that, half the time you use the Mage Bomb, you don't actually use it. So you're gonna see why that's kind of bad. Next is the Void. So I have to bring up something here. Before I go into Void, if you're a pro, if you know, is only good for the Gravitational Earth build. Which if you're a pro, you would also know that Earth is crap. It's shit. No one should ever use it right now until the devs give it a buff. This is update 499, so maybe if we get buffed in the future. But right now, it's kind of shit. But it's the best Earth ability. You're gonna see later that pretty much every other ability sucks. So this is going at C tier. Yeah, a lot of things are going C tier. Next is Holy, A tier. Yeah, that's right, just A tier. Because Holy is kind of required, and the Holy art is probably one of the best. The Holy art of lesser healing, really good. Nothing you can say about it. You just spam that Holy boost, and you will do tons of healings to all your team in a small radius. Now, of course, there's other alternatives to healing your teammates that I've seen. I've heard someone doing like the Craigstone build to be able to heal everyone around them, instead of using a Holy build and being effective still, but this is still a very required healing spell. overall. Next is going to be Paladin. It's a hard one. I'd say put a B. I mean, it's good for like a Paladin type of build where you're just standing still and jabbing everything in front of you without being damaged too much. But in the places where you need to be able to survive that amount of damage, you don't need to deal that damage back with this thing. The damage it does is very minimal because of its, well, you don't take a lot of damage while doing it. So it's not really worth. And considering you need to be holy for it, like I said, if you're a little bit holy, you may as well go all the way. That's a healing instead. So it's going at B tier, because it's still pretty good for being able to have that defense, which is kind of rare nowadays. Next is this. Now you might think this is good because it lowers the defense of everything you hit and around you, but you'll be surprised that it only lowers their damage and you don't do damage through them. Because of that, if you did largen how much damage you did to them, it would be a little much higher, but it doesn't do that. And of course, when you're Hex, which is also a pretty bad build, in the same reasoning I'm using for that, I'm putting it C tier. It's not terrible like the other ones, but outside it just doesn't use for any build. It's kind of bad. Next is Jinx, another one of these weaponites which are only good for its build, which is basically spamming effects on the enemy and then using it. Outside of using that, it's D tier. That build was recently nerfed, I believe, as well. So you're gonna see that you're not being able to spam the effects as much, and I used it in my very first build actually, but still kind of sucky. Next is Hex Tentacles. Only good for another build. Outside of that, it deals damage to you, valuable damage. It doesn't scale that much off of Hex, so it's also going in D tier. Yeah, that's about it. That's all I can really say about that one. Next is the Crushed Flame beam. This was something that I really strived towards, and once I got it, it was kind of pile of crap. It just so randomly deals damage to yourself, and because it scales more off of Hex than Flame, I believe. Oh, it does 1-to-1, I don't remember. That's not worth getting for any build. It just shoots randomly, does damage to yourself, unless you have Craigstone. Not Craigstone, what Rejuvenating Flame. And so yeah, kind of poop. Next is Blessing. Now, Summoners, not that good. They're not meta at all, but they're really fun to use. And this guy is the inferior form of summoning, in my opinion. Yeah, you heard that right. I think bees are better than Summoners. So, because of that, I'm putting it at C tier. Summoner's pretty good, and this guy is doing Rage. Could still do some decent builds, being able to go through walls and cheese some bosses, I hear. Not bosses, but the bees are overall better, in my opinion. Next is the, I believe this is Mage Bombers here. Mage Bombers are better. I just talked over why this guy was bad. This guy's better. A tier. It was not as viable as other classes in terms of getting the Mage Bomber, because the Mage Bomber is pretty easy to get, to be honest. But I'm putting it A tier because although it is Summoner's the best class overall, compared to anything else in terms of Summoners, which is only 2, well 3 if you count these, 4 if you count these, I think this is best. Next is Necromancer. This is a hard one because normally when you have tons of enemies in front of you, killing them all in one swoop, like this would benefit off of, you will only find in the dungeons or other places like that, and it's not helpful in that situation because there's no nearby bosses. So, although it may seem cool ability, it's only D tier compared to the rest of the summoning stuff like the Mage Bomber. Next is the Wolf, C tier. Normally when you go Hex Wolf, you can only spawn like 1 or 2 of them because you can't really make room for other things. When you do that, they only weaken the defense, and the same reasoning why the one right here, the Cursed Mark, which lowers lowers the attack for other things, it's still the same. So yeah, it's around that location as well. Next is Flame Slash. This is shit. Like, it just shoots a single beam and has like 30-second cooldown, I think. Not good. It scales a lot of fire though, but not good for any builds. At least it goes through walls, but it's just so little damage, and you need that constant DPS for metas nowadays. So this is kind of shit. I think this is Earthquake, I believe. This is actually pretty viable. I've seen, I'm putting it B tier because although it is physical, and there's better physicals out there, like this A tier right here, you're gonna find that this is actually very good for support, to being able to see tons of enemies in one place. Going in there with physical builds is really difficult unless you have this, so that they get stunned over and over and over again. Anyways, this is the Flamethrower build. It's A tier. It's the best Flamethrower you're gonna get out there. I'm thinking of putting it at the S tier, but I don't think so. Most S tiers deserve to the ones that are actually overpowered, so I'm not gonna put that there. Next is the Storm. this is actually pretty good for a very early game. I would say, out of all of the weapon arts you can get for free without using any SP, this is the best. B tier. It does tons of damage, it scales with wind, and does large area effect, and doesn't have a very high cooldown. So it's very nice. Compared to this Gale Assault thing, which I'm going to do right now because of what I'm talking about, it's D tier. Poopy. This is so much better, and I don't know why you wouldn't use it as soon as you started out the game, even if you're not going for wind build. Pretty nice. Stormcloak. I've never used Stormcloak. I don't really have a right to say anything about it, but I've never seen a good build of it in my life. So because I don't know where it is and where it deserves to be, put it C tier for now. It's not terrible, I don't think, but I don't know. I haven't used Stormcloak. That's the only one I can't say anything about. Next one is Cleanse. Why would you use this? I guess it's like required if you're a water build healer, but still shit. No one needs to get rid of their debuffs unless, oh, they have Dragonator or something. It sucks. A D. Poo. Bad. Not moving on. Waterfall. Like I said earlier, most builds that suck in the first place, like Earth and Hex, I can't really give a valid reasoning to like, oh, although this is good compared to the rest of the Hex ones, this doesn't really have much to stand up against Cleanse, because Cleanse is shit. It heals tiny bit, but still bad. So, I guess C, water sucks anyways. And although you can hit it twice with the water blades that you get from it are anyways, I still don't know why you would use this. Next is Ground. I think you know where this is going. All of this is poo. Except for this one, which may be B tier, because I've seen one build where that's good. This Ground Stun though is pretty good too, so I'll put that there. But other than that, that's the end of the tier list for the weapon skills. That's gonna be the end of the video. See you guys in the next video, and check out my Discord if you haven't already. Bye bye.